Hello friends, welcome to this video. I am Rohit. Hope you are doing great. Friends, in today's video, we are going to discuss topic how to use SQLite database in Android. These several topics we are going to cover. So friends, this topic is little bit vast and I decided to divide this topic in two videos. In first part, I am going to discuss theoretical and fundamental concepts regarding SQLite database, and in second part I am going to discuss the actual example based on whatever concepts we have seen in part 1. So in part 1, first of all we are going to discuss the introduction to SQLite database. Then next to that we are going to understand SQLiteOpenHelper class. We will see syntax as well as we will see various features of this SQLiteOpenHelper class, how it is useful while using SQLite database in our Android application. Then next to that we are going to discuss two important classes. One is ContentValues and second one is cursor. So these two classes we require in various database operations, like insert may be there, update may be there, delete may be there, display may be there. So while writing queries and functions or performing these various database operations, we require these two classes extensively. That's why we will understand them, we will go through their methods and we will see how they can be useful in performing various database operations. Then next to that I am going to discuss various methods of SQLite database, so which will be useful for performing these various database operations like insert, update, delete, display, etc. So like this we will cover the part 1 of this topic, and in part 2 of this topic we will see the first of all file structure of our example. So which files we are going to create, what functions that files will contain, and how our output will be there. I am going to show you output screen, and then actual implementation of our example we are going to see. So in this way we have planned to understand this topic. So friends, it is recommended that before going through program of database, you go through the theoretical concepts regarding SQLite database in Android. So whenever you will do actual program, whenever you will implement actual concepts, it will be easy to understand and to implement. That's why first of all you go through this first part and then you go through the second part, which will contain actual example. Now friends, without wasting time, let's dive into today's video and we will try to understand now introduction to SQLite database in Android. Now first of all, let's try to understand what is SQLite. So friends, SQLite is a lightweight and efficient database engine, and that is most widely used in Android application development. Now why most of the applications are preferring SQLite database over other options? Because its simplicity and performance. So it is open source relational database management system, and which is embedded within Android platform directly, or we can say Android comes with a built-in SQLite database implementation. So we do not have to perform any separate procedure, we do not have to perform any separate configuration for using SQLite within our Android application, because it is part of Android platform itself. So friends, in application development, implementing database related operations is already a very complex. That's why most of the developer prefer SQLite, which provides simple and efficient way for storing and managing data within Android application. So as I told, it is part of Android platform itself. That's why we do not have to perform any extra steps for setting and using SQLite for our application. So SQLite is ideally suitable for small to medium kind of database requirements in mobile applications. So if your application having needed to store small amount of data, then SQLite will be very good option because its simplicity and high performance, as well as we do not have to take any extra efforts for setting and using it in our application. So SQLite database can be created with SQL commands. So whatever SQL command we are familiar with, all that commands we may use while working with SQLite database. So as in the intro we told you, while working with SQLite database, we have to use a special class called SQLiteOpenHelper class. So all the discussion that we will have in video and in our program, it will be around this class. So this class is very important. So this class provides various methods which will be useful for creation as well as management of our database. So friends, remember this class name, SQLiteOpenHelper class. As I told that SQLite is a part of Android platform itself, that's why we do not require any special setup or any special procedure for implementation of SQLite or using SQLite. So SQLite database is storing all our data locally within the text file. So if your application is using SQLite database, so whenever you will install application and whenever that database will be used by your application, at that time a local file will be created within your mobile phone or tablet where all your data will be available within text format. So this is how SQLite is storing data within database. So friends, as we discussed, SQLite is supporting all standard functions and features of relational database management system. So in order to access these functions and work with database, we do not have to use any special drivers like JDBC, ODBC. So the name of package where all the SQLite related classes and interfaces are available is android.SQLiteDatabase. So if you import this, it will be available with all important and useful classes for implementing database functionality within our application. So whenever application needs to store data, there are various options available in Android, like you may store it in database using SQLite, you may use shared preferences, or you may store your data within files. So among these options, over the shared preferences and saving data within file, SQLite is always preferable because it is providing all standard features of RDBMS. So managing and storing data within SQLite is more easy as compared to shared preferences or saving data within file. So friends, if our application is using SQLite database, so whenever we will install our application, so locally at this path, our database will be created and it will be used by our application. So data, here will be our application name within which databases will be the directory, and in that we will have our database name. This is the introduction to SQLite within Android. Now let's move further and understand what is SQLiteOpenHelper class. So friends, as in introduction, we learn in order to create and use SQLite database for our application, we need to take help of a special class called SQLiteOpenHelper class. So let's try to see what this class is, what features this class has, and its syntax. SQLiteOpenHelper is a helper class which is provided by Android framework. And for what purpose this class is useful? So first purpose of this class is to help developer to manage the database creation, and second purpose is to help developer to manage the versions of SQLite database. So these are the two main reasons for which we are going to use SQLiteOpenHelper class. So SQLiteOpenHelper class is useful for creating database, opening database, managing database, as well as for handling the upgrade or downgrades whenever database schema changes. So in short, SQLiteOpenHelper class helps us to create and manage our SQLite database that will be used by our application. Now let's try to discuss various features of SQLiteOpenHelper class. So first feature is useful in database creation. So this class helps us to create the SQLite database if it doesn't exist. So developer can define the database schema with help of SQLiteOpenHelper class within the onCreate method. Second feature we have useful in version management. So for managing our database versions, SQLiteOpenHelper class is useful. So whenever we are updating our schemas of database, then in that case for managing our versions, the SQLiteOpenHelper class is useful. So SQLiteOpenHelper class helps developer to specify the database version number while creating the instance of SQLiteOpenHelper class, so they will be able to track the latest version of their database. So in this class there is one method called onUpgrade, and this method will get invoked whenever database version changes. Now third feature we have, it is useful in opening and closing database. So friends, in order to perform various operations on database, we need to open our database first of all, then we will be able to fire various queries on it, and after use we need to close the database connection as well. So for opening and closing database, SQLiteOpenHelper class is useful. So it provides various methods which help us to open our database in readable or writable form. Next useful feature it has, it provides thread safety. So SQLiteOpenHelper class ensures the thread safety by managing database access from multiple threads. So it ensures that only one thread can access the database at a time. So integrity and validity of data will be maintained. And last feature we have helper methods. So apart from methods for creation and management of database, SQLiteOpenHelper class also provides methods for common database operations like executing queries, inserting, updating or deleting reports. So friends, these are all the features of SQLiteOpenHelper class. Now let's move further and understand how we are going to implement the SQLiteOpenHelper class. So this is the syntax of SQLiteOpenHelper class. So here our name of class is DBHelper, which is extending SQLiteOpenHelper class. So in this class we have one constructor and two methods. So first thing we have a constructor. So you can see our name of class is DBHelper, that's why our constructor name is also DBHelper. So in this constructor we are giving a super call to the constructor of SQLiteOpenHelper class. So these require several parameters, you can see. So the first parameter is the current context, the second parameter is the name of database. So whatever database name we have decided that we may specify over here. And next parameter we have to specify the cursor factory. So if you specify null, then default cursor will get invoked, default cursor will be available to use. So here friends, understand that cursor will be useful whenever we are retrieving records from the database by firing select query, and all that records will be available within the cursor. So we will be able to process them and display them. So this is the cursor factory parameter. So if we specify null, so it will use default cursor. And last parameter specifying the version. So as we are initializing our database, so first version of our database we are specifying with value 1. So this super call to the constructor of SQLiteOpenHelper class will set up our database and will do the necessary configuration related to our database. So this is the first thing in DBHelper class. So this is the constructor. Now let's move further and look into the method called onCreate. So it is a public method having return type void. This method requires one parameter, and that is the object of SQLite database class. Now this method will be invoked only once throughout the application lifecycle, and this method will be invoked whenever there will be first call to get readable database or get writable database. So whenever we will be using our database for retrieving data or for writing data to our database, then this method will get invoked. Now next to this we have one more method called onUpgrade. So this method is also public and having void as a return type. So this method requires three parameters. First one is the instance of SQLite database, second one is the old version, and next one is the new version. These are the integer values. So friends, whatever version we are specifying here, you can see 1. Right now it is 1. So likewise, if we are upgrading our database, then our versions will get changed. So in order to upgrade our database, we may specify the old version and new version. So this method will be invoked whenever there will be updation within the existing version. So as per your requirement, you may specify different code as well within these methods. So this is the overall structure of our DB helper class, which is extending SQLiteOpenHelper class. So in summary, we want to say SQLiteOpenHelper simplifies the management of SQLite database within the Android application. As we have seen, it provides various methods as well as constructor for initializing and for setting our database, and as well as it is a fundamental and basic component with which developer needs to work while implementing SQLite database in Android application. Now let's move further and understand another very important class. The name of class is ContentValues class. So friends, while performing insertion operation, updation operation within database, we need to pass values in form of object of content values. So whatever data we want to put within database for insertion operation or updation operation, all that data first of all we will put within the object of content value class, and then that object we will pass to the methods of SQLiteOpenHelper class. So let's try to see the syntax. So here you can see, first of all we are creating the object of our content value class. Then next to that we are using put method of content values class. So this put method requires two parameters. First one is the key and second one is the value. So key actually specifies the name of column within our database where we want to put the value, and the second parameter, that is value, it is specifying the data that we want to store within the given column. So this is the syntax of content values. Now let's try to see the example. So friends, in this example, first of all we are creating the object of content value. Then next to that we are using put method over here, and now you can see this is the name of our column and this is the value. So first name is name of column and Rohit is a value. In the second statement, department is the name of column and design is a value. So like this we may specify our data. So this object we will use within the various methods like insert, update. Now next to that we have another important class called cursor class. So friends, in Android, cursor is also a class and it is useful for traversing the result of database query. So whenever we execute a query and we got certain result, that all result will be available within the cursor object. So we may go through various records that are available within the cursor object. So it allows us to iterate over the rows of the records that are written by the database query. So what is use of cursor class? So first use is retrieving the data. So after executing the query using method like raw query or query from SQLite database, the result is written in form of cursor object. So this object allows us to access various rows of the result set one by one sequentially from start to last. So this is the first use of cursor class. Second use, traversing the rows. As in the intro we learn, the cursor class provides various methods which allow us to traverse through the result set rows. So it provides various methods like move to first, move to next, move to previous, move to last. So these all method will move our cursor to the first, next, previous and last record respectively of the result set that is written by our query. Now next use of cursor class is accessing data. So once we set cursor to the specific row like first row, previous row, next row, last row, we will be able to retrieve the data that is available within that row using various methods of cursor class. So if you want to retrieve string kind of data, you may use getString method. If you want to retrieve integer data, you may use getInt method. If you want to retrieve long data, you may use getLong method. In same way, you can use getFloat, getDouble method by specifying the column index or column name. So for example, I may use getString of 0 for retrieving the data from the first column of the current row, and which will be obviously a string. So in this way, we may use the methods of cursor class for accessing data. Then next use of cursor class is checking the validity of data. So cursor class provides various methods as we learn, move to first, move to last, etc., which is returning boolean values and they are indicating whether the cursor is moved successfully or not. So we may use this method for checking or testing if there is any row available or not within the result set. So this is how we may use these methods for checking the validity of rows within the result set. So last thing in the discussion we have closing the cursor. So friends, as we discussed, the cursor object is storing the result that is written by our query. So it is essential to close the cursor object once we are done with its use. So it will free up the occupied system resources. So for that purpose, we may invoke the close method of cursor class, which will release the resources that are associated with our cursor object. So this is how the cursor class and its related methods are available. So cursor class is useful in the display operation. Now let's move further and understand one basic example how cursor class can be used. So in this statement, first of all, we are creating the object of cursor class and we are specifying our query using a method called raw query. This method requires two parameters. First one is SQL query and second one is optional parameters. So if you want to specify any runtime parameters, runtime values for your query, you may specify them instead of null. So in this query, we do not have any runtime parameters to specify. That's why we have specified null over there. So in our query, we are selecting two fields from our table. First field is first name and second field is department, and our name of table is my table. So next to that, within this if block, first of all we are checking the condition. So if move to first method of cursor returns true, then we are iterating through this cursor object. So for that purpose we are using do while loop. So within a do, we are trying to retrieve value of first name and last name. So for that purpose we are using string variable, string fname and string department, and we are using getString method of cursor object as we have discussed. So we are specifying the name of our column using getColumnIndex. So name of our column is first name, and here name of column is department. So both values will be retrieved and it will be available within the first name and last name. So here we may display this retrieved value. So this do while loop will continue till last record. So whenever the cursor object will reach to last record, it will end this loop. So like this we may retrieve the data from our cursor object. So friends, if you have integer data, if you have float data, if you have double data, then you will replace this getString method with getFloat, getDouble, getInt, etc. So after this, as we discussed, in order to release the occupied resources, we will close our cursor. So this is how the simple way we have demonstrated for using cursor to retrieve our data from database. Now let's move further and understand the various methods of SQLite database class. So friends, whatever methods we are going to discuss related to SQLite database class, all these methods are useful for performing the various operations like insert, update, delete, display, etc. So let's try to see the first method. So name of first method is open or create database. So this is the syntax of open or create database method. Its return type is SQLite database object. Now first parameter to this method is name of our database file. Second parameter is operation mode. So in most of the cases our operation mode will be mode private. And third parameter is the factory object. So as we discussed, it is providing the cursor that is to be used for reading the data from database. So if you specify null, it will use the default cursor. So this is the first method, and let's try to see the example. So here we are creating the object of our SQLite database class database. Next to that, using the current context, we are calling this open or create database method. So name of our database file is my database. The mode of operation is mode private, and last factory object is null. So it will use default cursor. Now let's move further and understand the second function. Name of second function is execSQL. So syntax is void execSQL, and it need one parameter, that is the SQL query that is to be executed. Now let's try to see the example. So database is object of our SQLite database class, and we are specifying our query create table if not exist. So if my table is not exist, then it will create this table. And what fields we are specifying here? So first field is ID, type is integer, and it will be a primary key. Second one is name, and its type will be text. Like this we may execute query using execSQL function. Next function we have raw query. The syntax of this function is raw query, and it need the first parameter as a SQL query, and second parameter is the selection argument. So if you want to specify any runtime parameters for your query, then you may use this second parameter, otherwise you may specify null. And return type of this method will be a cursor. So whatever result this query will return, all that result will be available within this cursor object. So we will be able to iterate through. So let's try to see the example. So here we have a cursor object. So we are calling this raw query method using our database object, and our query is select star from my table. So all fields from my table will be selected and selection argument is null. So all records will be available within the cursor. So we may use while loop or do while loop for iterating through this cursor object. Now let's move further and understand next insert method. So this method is used for inserting a record within the database. So this method having return type as a long, and it needs 3 parameters. First one is the name of table where we want to insert the record. So this second parameter is optional, it may be null. By default SQL do not allow us to insert completely empty row, but if you want to specify completely empty row, then we may specify, then it will allow us to insert a row with null values. And last parameter is object of content value. So as we discussed in the theory, so whatever values we want to insert, first of all we will put them within the object of content value, and then that object we are going to pass to this insert method. Long new row ID. Now we are invoking this insert method using our database object. Name of our table is my table, second parameter is null, and last parameter is the content values. Like this we will be able to put data within our database using insert method. Next method we have update method. So its return type is integer and it needs 4 parameters. First parameter is the name of table where we want to perform update operation. Second parameter is the object of content value where we will pass all the data that we want to update. Third parameter is the where clause, which is optional. If you don't specify, it will update all rows. And last parameter is where arguments. It is also optional. So it specifies values that is to be replaced placeholders within the where clause. This is how the update method is available. So here we are specifying the updation ID. So we are converting this integer value within the string using string.value of method. Then here we are specifying the row updated integer variable, and we are invoking the update method using our database object. So here table name is my table. The object of content value is content values, and on what basis we want to update record. So we are specifying that field over here, that is where clause where id equals to, and with what values you want to match our record. So we want to match our record on this update id value, so which is actually where argument. So this is how we will specify the update query. Now let's move further and understand the last method, delete method. So it is useful for deleting the data from database. Its return type is integer and it needs 3 parameters. The first parameter is the name of table in which you want to perform delete operation. Next parameter is where clause, which is optional, which specifies the rows that are to be deleted, and where argument, which is again optional. It specifies values to replace placeholders within the where clause. So this is how the syntax is available. Now let's try to see the example. So here as well we are specifying our id value based on which we are going to match our record within this variable. Then next to that we are creating one variable integer row deleted, and we are calling now delete method using our database object. So first parameter is name of our table, second parameter is where clause, which is specifying id, which will be unique column for matching our record, and on what basis we want to match the records that are to be deleted. So it is specified as a where arguments, and value is update id. So like this we may invoke the delete method. So friends, all these methods are useful for performing the various operations on database like insert, update, delete, display, etc. So friends, here we are reaching to the end of our part 1. So in this video we have understood what is SQLite database in Android, what are its various features. We have understood SQLiteOpenHelper class, its features, its syntax, what methods it contains, how the constructor is available. Then we have seen the ContentValues class, its methods. Then we have seen the cursor class and its methods, as well as we have seen how we can use cursor class for retrieving the data from our database. Then we have seen the important methods of SQLite database class. So friends, I hope this theoretical discussion will be helpful to you in understanding the practical example that we are going to cover within the next video of this topic. So friends, if you find this video useful, please like and share this video. If you are new to our channel, please subscribe this channel. Thank you for watching. I will see you in next video.